bring in Michael Adler now for more on all these developments at the UN. And Michael worked as a journalist. He covered global news for a number of years. He's now with the Wilson Center. That is an independent research center here in Washington, D.C. I want to thank you for coming in.
Thank you
as a guy who's covered global news, what's your headline out of the last week or so?
Well, it's clearly Iran, and a startling turnaround by Iran in their posture, in their rhetoric to the United States and to the international community. Iran, which in previous years was represented by Mahmoud Ahmadinejad as president and was bellicose, was confrontational, and was insulting, became friendly, eager. It was as if the rogue state had turned into the good world citizen.
Last year, kind of framing this, we had the cartoon bomb with Netanyahu. Right. This year, he's the last speaker kind of making his appeal, hey, don't get sucked in. But it seems like the air's been taken out of the balloon for him in a sense, because Rouhani did have quite a charm offensive, didn't he?
Rouhani had a very great charm offensive. And Netanyahu, some felt, was too aggressive. But the bottom line is that for all its charm offensive, Iran has not said what they're willing to do. There are questions to be answered. There is a deal to be worked out where Iran would have to step down from the level of enrichment they're doing. And they would have to accept greater controls on what they're doing. None of that was made clear at this meeting. So there is going to be a meeting in Geneva of the 6 nations negotiating with Iran, and they will sit down, and it will be the time to go to details. And the devil is in the details on this issue, because the two sides are in a way not that far apart, but there are questions of timing, there are questions of what you do with the program, which have divided them through 10 years of negotiations.
Let me ask you about the United Nations just in general. It seemed like it was frozen. It couldn't really get anything done. A lot of people were looking at it saying, what's going on here? And then remarkably, this last week, you see the Syrian resolution as well. It seems like this body has kind of come to life. What was your takeaway from there?
Well, I think that the United Nations is a vehicle, and it's only as good as the countries which make it up. You had in Syria, Russia and the United States coming together in a rather astounding deal. When you look at how things looked before that happened, it looked like we were on the verge of a bombardment, and now it looks like it could work out. And the same for Iran. It's a sharp turnaround. And when you have goodwill and when you have discussion, I think then the United Nations has room to be effective.
There's so many stories percolating last week. Another one that also kind of maybe not on the front page because of all the stories that broke, but Dilma Rousseff, Evo Morales, these shots taken at the United States, there's still a lot of anger about the Snowden affair. How did you read that?
I think there's still a lot of anger about the Snowden affair, and that's going to have to play itself out.
What do you see moving forward? You know, we talked about the Syrian resolution where there's this break in the gridlock. Do you think that can be built on in terms of actually something coming through in Geneva as well with the peace?
I think definitely. On the one hand, the Iranian crisis is independent from the Syrian crisis. This has been going on since 2002. It has its own dynamic. But when you have a settlement like that reached in a country where Iran is directly involved, it can only be encouraging that when you had a question of weapons of mass destruction, the conflict, which seemed as if it was heading to be kinetic, to be bombardment, looks like it's going to be settled through negotiations and diplomacy.
Quickly, because we're just about out of time, winners and losers.
Well, I think on Iran, we don't know yet. In Syria, I think both Vladimir Putin and Barack Obama are great winners, and it all depends on how it plays out.
Michael Adler, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.